A very good evening and welcome to the SheLeads LiveCast brought to you by Zion Publishers. Today, the 2nd of September 2023. My name is Doso Radido. I am the Operations Director at Zion Publishers, a publishing company that's based here in Nairobi. As I had been promised to you earlier, we are bringing you a conversation that is part of a larger conversation that we are doing under the project SheLeads, and this conversation is aimed at helping us to bring about understanding about the role of women and their contribution to leadership, to growth, and to development. And as had been earlier communicated, we are going to be hosting Mrs. Hellene Otieno, the CEO of Helle Enterprises, and an author of one of the volumes of SheLeads, and she'll be joining us shortly. So before we are joined by her, I will request that if you can hear the sound of my voice, that you can be able to begin to invite people in your network or invite your friends so they can be part of this conversation. My hope is that by the time we are done with this conversation today, we have learned, we have interacted, we have asked questions, we have known each other, we have developed an understanding and picked strategies from the best minds around, and we are able to go and apply that in our places of work. As I said, my name is Doso Radido, and I am glad to bring you this conversation today. I will be assisted in this conversation today by my co-host, who is Hellene Kunyu. I'll be allowing her to say hello to us in a short while. But before we go there, I will request that if you can hear the sound of my voice, you have joined this conversation, you have been waiting for it, you are a part of this conversation. I will request that you share this. With people in your network and let them know that we are live and that the conversation has already begun. So I'll give us a few minutes to do that. Meanwhile, I will be bringing in my co-host, Miss Hellene Kunyu, to say hello to us. Hellene, if you can hear me, please, I'll hand out the microphone to you so you can say hello to us as I look to admit our guest today. Hellene, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Doso. So my name is Hellene, and I'm so excited to be part of this conversation. By the end of this conversation, I hope I'll be able to learn one or two, three things concerning work and life balance. I hope for those who are listening, are also going to be able to come out of this conversation with something. So in case of any questions, I hope you're going to be answered by our guest, Hellene. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I can see Hellene is already in here. I'm just trying to admit her to be a speaker. Hellene, if you can hear me, please join in as a speaker. Yes, I will allow you to join in now as a speaker. I want to be sure that she is in before we go any further. Yes, I can see she has joined the conversation. So you can just have your mic muted for now until the time I will be passing the microphone to you, and then we can go. Thank you so very much, everyone. Today's conversation is going to be centered around the topic of work-life balance. Work-life balance is something that has been talked about a lot, and from what I have gathered so far, it is a conversation that began to pick momentum from the early years of 1970s to 1980s, when we had the baby boomers entering into the market space and desiring to have some kind of balance because of the excessive demand of work that was mounting on them, and therefore the term was coined around that time. Uh, it has continued to be with us up to now, when we have the workplace realities that we are facing today. And the conversation today will help us to understand how the dynamics have been changing and how they will continue to change, even as the workplace continues to evolve and the people of the workplace also continue to evolve, and the dynamics continue to play out in a different way. And to help us to bring all these things into context, we are joined today by Madam Hellene Otieno, the CEO of Helle Enterprises and a co-author of SheLeads Volume 1. She is a resource. She's an experienced person. She's been in the workspace for long, and she has served up to the place where she exited. Now she's running her own enterprises. She is a woman of influence and impact in our society today. So before I bring her on board, I just want to challenge you. If you have already joined the conversation, I want to thank you so very much. I want to ask you to do me a small favor. If you can invite some other people, invite your friends, alert people in your network, share this link and let them know that the meeting is already happening, the meeting is already going on. That would be a very good thing. As I told you, this conversation today is brought to you courtesy of Zion Pal Publishers, a publishing company that is based here in Nairobi, that is the force behind the SheLeads project that has been the talk of town and the talk of the world for the last couple of months, since we started pushing out the content that we are pushing out, and moving towards achieving particular agendas that we want to see realized in relation to women inclusion, the utilization of the women's resource, both in leadership and in the overall growth and development agenda. I will be giving us a brief history of that project in a short moment. Meanwhile, I'll just ask you to alert people in your network and let them know that the meeting is already going on and that our guest is already in the house. She is here. She is just sitting, waiting for us to begin to engage her and to ask the question. So if you can do me that small favor, that would be very, very good. So SheLeads is a project that is being run by Zion Pal Publishers. The whole idea behind the project is to create a platform where we can be able to continue to rally for the utilization of the resource that is trapped within the women. And this translates to different things in the workplace. Some people call it gender inclusion, some people call it inclusivity, some people call it diversity and equity, but we call it the inclusion of women into the key areas of work, the key areas of life, and the key areas of leadership. And this, we estimate, is very important because according to the statistics that we are seeing today, the representation of women in key issues is not looking very, very nice. I think the best I have seen so far is a 38% representation in the C-suite spaces. And as this continues to happen, we know that women are a huge resource. And even the gross numbers are showing that we have more women than men in Kenya, for example. I don't know how the situation looks like in other parts of the world, but I think in Africa, we tend to have those kind of numbers going on. So if we are able to tap into this resource, we can use it as a competitive advantage, as a way of stimulating growth and powering development in our space. And indeed, economists have already estimated that if we will be able to fully utilize the resource that is found within the women, then it is possible for us, for example, as a country, Kenya, to inject between 20 to 30 billion Kenya shillings in the economy, and those are impressive numbers. In my mind, I always say that that is how much we are losing for not doing that. They also say that if we move at the pace that we are moving, then we are likely to need between 100 and 300 years to be able to achieve full inclusion of women. Now that scares me because that means we are not moving at a pace that needs to be happening, and therefore there is need for us to come up with interventions, to come up with projects, to come up with conversations like these ones that can give us an opportunity to engage one another with another, and develop practical ways of dealing with what needs to be dealt with. So those of you who have been in the workspace, or those of you who have had an opportunity to work with women, or to be concerned about these issues, you know that the gaps are still very, very huge. We still have problems of glass ceilings and bottlenecks and sticky floors and biases and imbalances in terms of remuneration and paper ceilings and all these things that are happening, that we continue to do to our own disadvantage, because as we continue to frustrate this resource, as we continue to ignore it, and as we continue to suppress it, then we keep losing it. And one of the things that I think all of us understand today is the effect of brain drain. And the one of the people that have really been affected by this is the women themselves, because if they don't find space here, if they are not supported, if we don't build structures that can support and tap into that resource, then it is very easy that other nations that are building environments that are conducive for them, or that are opening space and supporting the kind of resource that they carry, will be attractive to them and will cause them to shift. And the, the impact of brain drain is known. Most of the best of our people have been exported or have been attracted to other working spaces in other parts of the world, and they are contributing to the economic development and even the quality of life in other spaces. Whereas in our space, we are not tapping into that. So there is need for us to have that conversation going, and therefore the SheLeads project is a project that is designed to be able to bring some kind of intervention so that we can be able to push the needle at least in the right direction and be able to alter those numbers and those percentages. We estimate that if we do a good job, then we should be able to move the representation at least from where we are, that 36 or 38%, to something. If it gets close to a 50% or a 60%, that would be a very good thing, because that translates to millions of women being given opportunity, being supported, and being allowed, importantly, to contribute to our growth and to the quality of life that we are experiencing. So back to today's conversation. As I said, today's topic is going to be work-life balance, and we are bringing in an expert who has talked about it, has practiced it, and has even written about it. As I mentioned earlier, she's one of the authors of the SheLeads Volume 1, and therefore she's speaking from both experience, from knowledge, and as a thought leader in that area, and therefore we can be able to trust what she's going to discuss with us today. So that as we get into this conversation, I want you to be ready to learn and be ready with your questions. So how we are going to do this is simple. If you have a question and you feel like asking it yourself, what you will do is to press that small tab that indicates that you're raising your hand, and then we'll give you an opportunity to ask the question. That way you can be able to speak to us and speak to the guest directly. If you feel you don't want to ask the question, you can type it and send it to my co-host, Electin Kunyu, who is ready to receive the questions, and she will be able to pass them to the guest, and the questions will be answered. My encouragement to you is that all the questions you have, or all the contribution you may have, the input you may have, please make sure they are felt in the conversation today as we go into the talks. So without further ado, allow me to now bring us Madam Hellene Otieno, the CEO of Helle Enterprises. I will allow her to briefly introduce herself, and then we will set the ball rolling. Over to you, Madam Hellene.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Duso, Electin, and all our guests this evening. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for that brief introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Like you rightly said, I have worked, especially in the financial services industries, for over 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And very happy to share some of my experiences as a woman leader.
Mm.
Right now, women, we just intentionally take our space. And that is why I was very happy to be part of the co-authors of Volume 1 of SheLeads.
Mm.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is Hellene in brief. As I said earlier, she's the CEO of Helle Enterprises and the co-author of SheLeads Volume 1. And her article in that volume actually addresses the topic of work-life balance. So, Hellene, just to help us to now set ground for the conversation, how should we understand work-life balance, and why is it even something that we should take seriously now that we are people who have deployed ourselves to doing work, and we are also doing life. I can see in that word there is work and there is life. So what? How should we understand it, and why is it even important for us to really take it seriously?
The issue of work and life has come to the fore, I think, in like the last 10 years or so, when it has become a topic that is, first of all, very, very wide. And even when I was writing on it, I tried to just take from my own experiences.
Mm.
We work,
Mm-hmm.
and we work in sorts of ways.
Yes.
As a parent, I go to work in the corporate space, but even in my own house, there are things that I must do as a parent, which I call work. And then there's outside that, like taking care of my family, there is Helen as a person. So I'm trying to balance my social life with I would say, activities that are supposed to bring me income, or activities that are supposed to contribute positively to who I am. So when I was looking at this topic, I looked at work from the perspective of a woman mothering in her home, in the family. And then there's when I go out of my house, I go and work in a corporate environment. And in both those spaces, the demands are almost equally high. And therefore, if you slack on one, the other will suffer. So there is that need to ensure that I am balancing these two things. And when you don't do it, it causes a lot of stress. It causes a lack of productivity in the work environment, the corporate work environment. Your home becomes a mess, you become stressed, and that kind of thing. So it is something that we really must manage, especially now when we have seen so many people getting stress-related diseases, losing it, so to speak, and just giving up on life sometimes. And that is why I thought it was a very, very important topic for any one of us to embrace at this point in time. What's different for all of us, and it really depends on where you are at any one time. But then there is you, the person, behind this work. And you have your life to balance in all of this. That is why I think it is a very, very important topic for us to look at. Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting to hear. Now, when I was getting ready to get into this conversation today, I had questions of when we talk about this. Of course, these days we understand that people work and people do life. So whoever came up with this looked at the two aspects, and I don't know if you have any history about how this word was even coined. Who is the coiner of the word work-life balance? I'm asking. Um, um, uh, there are people who do life entirely, and there's no work in their life. And I'll give an example of people who give the people who have given themselves to probably being mothers at home, or they have decided the whole of my life I'm at home, I'm taking care of my family and stuff like that. So and the entirety of their life is just that. And then of course we have another set of people who are given to work. Their life is like work. Whatever they are doing as life is actually what they are doing as work. So that that clear line between work and life is not there. And I think we're beginning to see a lot of that happening these days. How would you respond to that, putting it into the context of trying to create balance? Because hearing you, I feel like you're trying to say there is need for us to create a balance, so that you are not leaning so much on one side and therefore ending up picking up stresses or diseases or some other things that may cause you to experience harm, rather than experience the goodness of life.
Well, I would say that you can't, I don't really think that you can have one without the other. Even when we are staying at home, as a stay-at-home mom, for instance, let me look at just the scenario where you're a stay-at-home mom and you take care of your children, and you just make sure that the home is working day to day.
Yes.
Even when you're doing that, remember there are things that you value as a mother.
Yes.
That are important to you. And then in a day, you have to practice time management.
Yes.
As a mother, you will not wonder where your day went. You know that there is a complete schedule.
Yes.
Of what is supposed to happen in that day. And then, because you know that there are certain things that must be prioritized in your day, you need to set boundaries. So instead of being called to do things that are outside your priorities, you will have set boundaries for the chores or the schedule in your day to run as it should, isn't it? And when you say you're a stay-at-home mom, you have said you want to stay at home because you actually enjoy staying at home.
Yes.
And then there are all sorts of things that you balance day to day, including finances, nurturing your relationships with your children, your husband, or focusing on your health. Because remember, even as a stay-at-home mom, this is work. It is work, but there is still the mom outside that work. When do you focus on downtime? You have to find a space where at the end of the day, there's that place where you just breathe, where you exhale. And this is the same thing that happens even if you are working outside the home. The schedule is almost the same.
Yes.
That you must find time for downtime, which we refer to as life. So of course you cannot be going, even you do so when you're working, you work the whole day.
Yes.
But do you really just do Zion publishing work throughout the week up to Sunday. Really? We can't.
Yes.
Even if in our human nature is that we need downtime, we need to rest, we need to exhale. Even God himself, after 7 days, he rested.
Yes.
And in the way God did his work for 6 days, and on the 7th day rested, then we know, even from the Bible, which is our manual, for those of us who are believers, we know that we must balance between work and life, where we just rest. Life is just rest, where we just take time down. Yes, that's what I would say.
Wow, that's quite deep. Thank you so very much for that. So what I'm hearing you say is that the work-life balance is about creating a downtime so that you don't burn yourself out working and not giving yourself time to recover or to recoup yourself again and get yourself to be more productive when you get back to work. When it gets to the corporate world, we talk about it a lot in the corporate world as work-life balance. There are certain measures that probably can be used to say this looks like a good work-life balance, and this looks like not so good work-life balance. So I want you to help us to understand how do we put measures to that, so that we know it is this amount of time, or it is these activities, or it is this kind of of an output, or an experience. So how does it get measured? And as you answer that question, I'm also keen to know, from your experience, what are some of the best corporate practices that can incorporate this into the corporate culture, so that it is not a fight between the workers and the organization. I mean, it's a natural and seamless flow of things where this amount of when you get to this place, there's either a break, or there's something that happens to you that makes it possible for you to do to experience some kind of a downtime, or a break for you to be able to do life, and then now you can get back to work, etc.
Okay. From my own experience and working in the corporate environment, one of the things that the employer insists on is that after at least 6 months, ideally it is every year, but at least after every 6 months of work, each employee is entitled to between 21 and 32 days of leave away from work. And even if you do not take the whole 21 to 28 days or 32 days that you're entitled to, it is mandatory that each employee takes 14 days leave straight. We call it block leave. And that one was not a debatable thing. It was something that you had to do, and it was actually incorporated in your performance measurements.
Yes.
So it was part of the things that were being measured when you go for a performance review. One of the things that would be looked at is, have you taken your leave if it is due? Because the reviews would be at the end of the year. Have you taken your leave? Have you taken the mandatory 14 days leave? So when that was incorporated, it worked very well, because of course, Kenyans, we are very hardworking naturally. And sometimes people would just say they won't take their leave, and you would see the productivity going down. at least in the small teams, I would be able to see someone's productivity going down, and you would ask what is happening, and the person is tired, and you just tell them, I think you need to go and leave. Another thing that helped and was incorporated is when you go for away days where you just go to have fun. You don't talk about numbers, you don't talk about anything to do with work. You just talk about how you need to gel as a team, what you enjoy, what people don't know about you outside work. And it's a very easy environment where people are enjoying themselves, including leaders. So I believe that also worked very well, and it ensured that people were able to actually relax even when you don't want to relax, because there are some people who just love to work. So that has been deliberately incorporated in most corporate organizations. Yes, and nowadays, even when it comes to what is covered in your healthcare package, one of the things for you that you need to go and just check out is your overall health. Before, it never used to be covered by insurance, but nowadays insurance has incorporated it that you just go and have a body checkup just to ensure that you're okay, so that your mind is at peace and you're not worrying about your health or anything like that. Some corporate organizations like Safaricom, I know, have gyms within the organization. You can go and relax. Some of them have desks that you can stand in a space and still work instead of just sitting, just to take care of your health. So just intentional things that the organization is doing to ensure that if you need to take a break, you can walk out, go somewhere and just sit for maybe 10 minutes for a room that is specifically for you to relax. So those are just things that organizations have of late incorporated in the work environment to ensure that the employees are able to take a break even during a work day. Those are some of the things I would share.
Oh, that's so good. Talking about the modifications that are being done in workplaces to be able to at least bring that element of relaxation and at least incorporating work and life. We now find ourselves in a situation where there is the virtual reality. I'm keen to hear your thoughts about the work from home experience, or this virtual reality that brought it actually took the office back to the house, and we created new problems. So I want to hear your thoughts about that and how that is affecting the dynamics of work-life balance, because you see, when people went to work in the house, then we realized that we are creating work-related chaos in the house, so that the life that used to be in that space is now converted into a work environment. And I know many people experience this during the pandemic. As you answer that, I will allow one person to ask their question. Immediately you're done answering that question, I saw a hand being lifted up.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, okay. When COVID happened and quite a number of organizations gave us the option to go and work at home. Of course, it was something that was also new to us.
Yes.
And in that respect, we had to kind of make adjustments in the home. For me, my employer ensured at that time when I was working, they ensured that they gave us interest-free loans just to ensure that you have the right tools to be able to work at home. Because when you're at home, you probably didn't have a desk in the house because you're used to your desk in the office. You didn't have a laptop. You don't have a good chair that you can sit on the whole day. And so one of the things that they did was just ensure that those of us who wanted to continue to work from home, and at some point it wasn't really a choice. So many people took loans, updated, and ensured that they have a specific workspace at home. But at times it was not ideal, especially when you have young children.
Yes.
Who are staying at home and they keep seeing you. So it is a discussion that we had in the office, and we said, for this to work, you really need to create a space as if you're out of that house. Ensure that you're in a room where you report to the way you report to work.
Yes.
Because the other thing is that you can actually become very lax about ensuring that it is time for work. You have to be very intentional about ensuring that your work hours remain the same, even in the house.
Yes.
Because work is happening, you're expected to do what you would normally do if you were in the office. So you have to create a quiet space and an office within your house, which you lock if you have young children, so that they do not come inside.
Yes.
Inside the space where you're working.
Yes.
So for me, for anyone who has struggled with that, it is just to be intentional about it, ensure you have your work tools, ensure that you're taking your break at the same time that you used to take your break when you're working in the office, so that even the people in your household get used to the fact that it is mommy is now working or daddy is now working, and they will not disturb you, or even if you have a house help, the house help will ensure that nobody is coming to your workspace at that time. Yes.
Well, thank you so very much. I will allow a question from Joan Nakitende. Please, Joan, if you can hear my voice, unmute your mic and ask your questions. Meanwhile, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, or if you do not want to speak, send your questions to Electin, so that your questions can be passed to the guest as we continue with the conversation. Over to you, Joan.
Thank you very I'm grateful for being part of this conversation. As Helen was speaking, she mentioned work-life balance in a context of like what we used to have during the COVID time, working from home or remote working. For me, my question is, for those of us who are entrepreneurs or we are self-employed, this is something that is very challenging, because most of the time we're so passionate about what we do. You find that you might get into the office at 8 and come out at 9. Because I'm self-employed, no one is going to tell me we close the office at this time, or our working hours are from this time to this time. And even then, when I leave office, sometimes I want to carry my work with me back home. Some corporate people do this, but I see it mostly with us who are self-employed. We want to carry the work back home, and in the night you wake up and you remember, oh, I didn't answer this email. You get up to answer. So how best can people who are self-employed or people who are into entrepreneurship, creating their own employment, how can we balance this work-life issue? Because it affects us too, but you find that we get used to being worn out, we get used to working so hard, and we forget that we have lives. Yeah, that's my question to you, Madam Helen.
All right. Your name is?
Joan.
Joan. Okay, Joan. I hear you. Especially when it comes to an entrepreneur, you are the business and the business is you. Essentially, that is what you're saying, isn't it? However, when you want to achieve balance, it has to be very intentional. Because remember, you are the key person in that business. The business needs you all the time, and the business needs you in good health. So one of the things that I would say is you really need, as an entrepreneur, you need to set boundaries and priorities. If you are able to define your priorities, as in what aspects of your life are important, and this goes again back to your own values. What do you consider important outside your entrepreneur, your business? What is important? And for that business to run, what are the priorities in the business? Those are the things that you should be dealing with, because at some point, as that business expands, I know it can be very challenging when the business is young. But as the business is growing, it is advisable that you are also grooming somebody who can step in and do some of the tasks. You are able to delegate some of the tasks so that you do not burn out. Because if you burn out and you're the only person and you have not delegated, it means that your business will be shut, isn't it? When you're not. So it is important just to prioritize. I would also say you create a schedule that you can stick to. I know it is difficult at the beginning, but just create a schedule that you can stick to. What you need to do in a day that is of priority, that will move the business forward tomorrow. And also, I know part of the challenge is that you feel like you must do everything, and you just need to learn to say no to some tasks that are going to move you out of what you had planned if they are not of priority, that can be delegated. Remember, in delegation, you are also empowering your team. And of course, try and focus on self-care, especially at the end of the week. Your business needs you, but it needs you in good health. So just prioritize what is important that will move the business forward without you being there. That would be my answer. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question. Yes. I am. All right.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much. One of the most powerful insights I'm picking from what you just said is that to achieve balance, you have to be very, very intentional. So a lot of this has to be self-driven, especially if you are an entrepreneur, because one of the challenges that entrepreneurs, self-employed people face is that they are the builders of those structures and those systems that they are using for work, which may be different for people who are employed, where there are policies that say you have to take leave, you have to take a break, or you're going out for team building, etc. The other important thing I'm picking from what you just said is that as an entrepreneur, your business will need you all the time, but it needs you in good health.
Yes, that's true.
Wow, that's so powerful. Thank you so very much for that. I'm wondering if there are any questions that have already been shared by Electin. Please, Electin, let me know if you have received any questions before we proceed.
Thank you so much, Doso. as per now, there are no questions, but myself, I think I have a question for our guest.
Yes.
So earlier on, you were saying that yes, we know that there's this scheduling of 21 days leave in a normal working office. And I know there's some people who also want to excel in their career. So I don't know if that goes with the work, because how you're explaining work in a way you are more, even when you're at home, you're also working. So what about this career person or rather career woman who also want to excel career-wise? And also because with the way things are changing, the trends in how it's changing when it comes, there are a lot of social media issues. Like you can see when the kids, maybe they have break from schools. They have break from schools. They're at home for holidays. Yeah, because we believe when they're in schools, the teachers are the ones who take care of them. And the moment when they're at home, it's our responsibility as parents to take care of them. Yeah. So how can a person be able to balance between the two? Because when it comes to somebody who is trying to put their focus career-wise, and also they have children also to take care of them, how are they able to do that?
Okay. We have every year when you're starting your year, part of the things that actually planned in the calendar is the leave of the whole team. Their own school calendar. For me, what used to work when my children were younger is that I would schedule my leave to concur with the school calendar, so that my leave, when I'm on leave, my children are also on holiday. And we are able to spend time together, quality time as a family. Sometimes it does not work as smoothly as we would want. For instance, if the children are on holiday for 30 days and you can only be away for 14 days, it is better than nothing. But I know that when you're able to schedule, then you're able to spend time and give your children quality time. So it is about synchronizing these two events so that you're not stressed. You're actually going on leave when you have planned to go on leave. So that calls for some planning on your part as a parent. And also, as a woman leader in the organization, you may have another team that is also working in the office. And we thank God for technology. You can stay in touch. But like I said, what matters to you? What are your priorities? Because even when you're away from work, you need to give your attention to your children. How much time out of the children's time do you want to give to the office? It has to be very intentional. Yes. And sometimes when you say no, or you get your team, into your corporate team, into a space where they know that actually when Helen goes on leave, you can only talk to her between this time and this time, or not at all. It is something that is actually within your control. It is the way you also socialize your team in the corporate environment and synchronize the two events in your life, prioritizing what is important to you. Does that answer you, Alexia?
Yes, it definitely does. I also have another question. I know we have also friends that we have created from our work environment. This is a question from the book, from what you wrote. I was privileged to read your article. And I noticed that you say that even at work, sometimes you can be challenged with the type of friends that you have in the workplace. Yeah, that you even end up sometimes after work you will want to also have some time with your friends and your colleagues. Yeah, but over time you just came and realized maybe this isn't working for you. But sometimes we also tell ourselves that when I'm engaging with my colleagues or people from my work environment, I'm also trying to create a connection at some point. Yeah, for rather building my network. So how are we also able to differentiate this normal friendship, office friendship, and also and the and also the networking level of friendship? How are we able to do that, or rather to differentiate between the two, so that you can be able to balance our work and our social engagement when it comes to work?
Okay. If you read my book, and I'm glad you did the article, one of the things that I said is that as of course in the work environment you also want to belong. You don't want to be that person when everybody's on this side, you're on the other side, saying you can't do this and you can't do that. But you have to be very self-aware. The friends that I had most of them were single people. If I can just draw from my book as an example. And I was a married person. And we would leave work and go after work to just relax. And we would tell ourselves, tunapigia mwili pole. Isn't that what we like telling ourselves as Kenyans? Yes, we love that. So you go there and then you forget yourself. You forget that these single people are just going to go and open their homes and go and sleep. You have a whole family that is waiting for you. So if you're not, you really need to draw the line. And that is why I'm talking about values, and I'm talking about what is important to you. I only realized how important my family was when it was almost breaking. So you have to draw the line. These are my friends, yes. Actually, they are your colleagues. Some are not friends. They are acquaintances, they are colleagues. And they are people you need to work with. You can sit with them, you can enjoy eating with them or having a drink with them. But be aware that for me, as a married person, my priority is that at 9 o'clock I need to be leaving because I have other responsibilities in my house. So you will balance because there are people you need to work with. That is the kind of friendship you're going to have with them. If you're working in a team, you need to understand each other at a different level, especially when you go out. When you go out just to team build, for instance. When you're team building, you're having conversations. Sometimes you're talking about who you are outside the office. Many times, many people don't show the side of them in the office that is actually them. They have to hold a certain kind of presence in the office. So I would say, just be self-aware, know what your priorities and your values are. Once again, I'll go back to that. But be very self-aware. What role is this person playing in my life? What value are they adding? Many times you realize that when something has gone wrong, because oftentimes you change because of crisis or because of choice. or it is just a chance change. But many times it happens because of a crisis. Something has gone terribly wrong, and you must now go back and reflect and wonder or ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Or what went wrong? Every so often you must go back and think about what caused what has happened, especially when it's a negative event. And that is where you now decide, okay, now I know that these actions will lead to this. This friend is serving this purpose in my life. This one is serving this purpose. And that is where you draw the line, put your bound. Electing?
Yes.
Have I answered the question?
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so very much, Electin, and thank you, Hellene, for answering those questions. When you were speaking, I kept putting all this conversation into context. And one of the things that was in my mind was the reality that we are facing today. Of course, we know that just like life, work is affected by things like culture, emerging technology, economic situation, and policy. So that the question that I have in mind is there are people who have been forced to be in a constant working mode because either they are doing short contracts and therefore after this contract they must jump onto another contract, and there is no one organization that is there to realize that they need a break because they appear here for 3 months, the next 2 months they're in another place, so they look like fresh when they are taking up an opportunity, but actually they are dragging with themselves a whole burden of never having gotten an opportunity to take a break. I want you to make a comment on that. And as you talk about that as well, we have come to a place where people have built a culture of side hustle so that people have main jobs and side jobs, and break time is used for side jobs, so that by the time somebody is coming back from their break, they're actually more tired than they were because they went doing side hustle. My question around that is, should there be a universal policy to guide people who have been working and are supposed to be on break to make sure that they are actually on break? Or should we just let people do things the way they want? Because we know there are situations where people are forced to take more than one job. And in the morning, they are working this job. In the night, when they're supposed to be resting or doing a bit of life, they are doing another job, doing a night shift somewhere. So the following day they come, they are tired, they are sleepy, and the situation is just looking very bad. So my question around that is that should we begin to think about a universal mandatory policy that says we will track people whether they are employed or doing side hustles, and get to know when somebody is supposed to take a break, they actually take a break, and if they don't take a break, they are forced to take a break. I don't know what you would think about that. And lastly, how does this sit in a situation where we have more people experiencing unemployment than employment, so that people are engaged in the work of looking for work, and now it looks like it's getting more and more desperate, getting more and more worse. How do you discuss this whole idea of work life to a population that is not yet working? They are actually trying to look for that work. Their work now is to look for work.
Wow. Okay. Now, that was a long question. The first bit of it.
Yes.
Yeah. The first bit of it you talked about. Could you just go through that again? I got the last bit of unemployment versus employment and people not actually working, and you're talking about life-work balance.
Yeah, that it's a question with three parts. Number one is the question of people who are in a constant working mode because they are doing contracts. 3 months they are here. After those 3 months, they're taking up another short contract. So there is nobody who knows that they have not taken a break. They can work like this for 5 years, and nobody knows that these guys have never taken a break. Number two, I was asking the question of main work and side hustle, so that those who have work, they also use their downtime time or their break time to do side hustle. So somebody is coming back from break and they look more tired than they are supposed to be, or they work during the day, main work, and then at night they are doing a side hustle work. So they are doing a night shift at night, and during the day they are dragging themselves to work. So the question there was, should there be a universal policy that forces people to take a break, and if they don't take a break, they are penalized for that? And then lastly, there was the question of, how do we put this whole conversation of work-life balance in a population that is experiencing more unemployment than employment?
Okay. Yeah, now I get it. So the constantly working mode is something that is very common in Europe. I think the US, I would say the US. Not so much Kenya, but I know again that when people have short contracts, they are always working. That is true. And this constant work, even if you're not monitored, it ends up showing in your physical being. It ends up showing, and it actually directly affects productivity. So it is unlikely, even if you want to hold these jobs, that you will work over and over again, because it will begin to show. You'll be doing a not so good job, and you may lose that job because of low productivity. When it comes to a universal policy, I do not know how that would be coined or how it would be monitored, but if it is something that would be realized, I would say it would be very important, because people are supposed to rest. The body can't take. Actually, your body forces you to stop at some point, where you see people have worked and then they just collapse. It happens.
Yes.
So it is not something that is sustainable. You may do it for a while, but it is not sustainable, because if you do not balance your downtime and this work, constant work, it impacts you on a personal level. Yes, it actually does. For people who do main work and side hustle, in Kenya, what I have realized is, because we do not have like a 24-hour economy that we can really talk of, most people will work during the day, maybe up to 5 o'clock, and then go into the side hustle in the evening. Even so, when you're tired, your productivity moves in the opposite direction. So it is something that if you're not aware of, you will never do anything to change it, because you feel like you're always chasing the coin. You're always chasing the next coin. If it is something that can be universally monitored, I would say yes, it would be good, but I don't know how that would be implemented, especially when your desire is to do otherwise. You know, people resist being monitored, always. They really do. But if it was possible, I would say go for it. Now, when it comes to unemployment versus employment, we are slowly moving away from formal employment. And many of our young people are now just working and using the social media space to earn some kind of income. We know that when you spend too much time on social media, sometimes it actually affects your mental health as well. And that is another conversation that is now being taken up, because what you see on social media is not necessarily the truth. So when it comes to doing the working or to just make money using the social media space, there is that bit that you still need to create downtime to balance it. You cannot be on social media throughout. There are people who don't sleep because they are on this thing called TikTok, which is literally ticking and talking the whole night. You know? So sometimes your children tell you they have gone to sleep, and when you go there, they are covered, but there is a light under the duvet. And it is something that you really have to take in stride and tell them, yes, even looking at your phone or your laptop or television in the name of working, that you're actually working on your phone, it is tiring. You need to just shut off that blue light and rest. So even when it comes to this informal employment, it is still work, and it still needs to be balanced. That's what I would say.
Wow, thank you so very much. Very, very interesting insight that you're bringing out there about how work is changing, and now people are exposed to constant work in a subtle way. Like, the office has come into the phone, it has come into the laptop. So when you carry your phone around, you've carried the office. When you've carried work. When you carry a laptop around, you've carried work. So many people are constantly working in a subtle way, and sometimes it's difficult to take a break from that kind of work, because it has been integrated into the phone, so that sometimes you think I'm using my phone as a gadget for social connection, but actually work is seeping through the cracks and following you, and sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and you're checking emails. so you're constantly working. So work is changing, and therefore our appreciation and handling of work related issues has to change. That's very, very, very interesting. The next question I'm going to ask is closely related to what Electin had asked, and is coming from the fact that even in workspaces we have people that we want to connect with and sometimes connect with socially. There is a book that I recently read that is called Surrounded by Idiots. We have sometimes surrounded by idiots. Yeah. So sometimes we have idiotic people around our lives, and we have seen many people using work to run away from life. I mean, there are certain things that are going on in life that are so disturbing, so distressing. So a lot of people would go and hide in the places of work, so that when they are constantly working, or when they're in that working environment, that's when they feel like there is some sanity in their lives. There is some kind of peace. And of course, we know that eventually they end up suffering because of the pressures of work and the related things. So I wanted to make a comment about that, the situation where people run away from life and they use work as a safe space, and they are constantly, as long as they're in the office, they are happy. But when they go home, it is stressful, it is chaotic, there is no peace there. So that even this work-life balance we are trying to talk about here is something that they may not even want to talk about, because in their spaces, there are more chaos in life than there are in their places of work. Now, the flip side of it is also true, that there are people who are running away. They are using life to run away from work, and this may be common with those people who either they don't like their work, or they are lazy, or they just don't like anything to do with the work, and therefore they keep talking about I need a work-life balance. I mean, I can't be working here all the time. I feel like I can't breathe, but actually they are running away from certain problems in the workplace. Let me hear your thoughts about these two scenarios.
Okay. So, running away from life and running away from work.
Yeah.
I would say there's a time and a season for everything under heaven. There is a time to work and to rest. So, when we have people who are always at work, or always saying they are at work, or they are working, these are the people who they are defined by their work, and they do not realize that your work does not define you. It is something you do, you leave it, you go to something else that you need to do. And when your work defines you, many times you will find that when you lose that work, you are so lost. You start struggling because you're all about, the only thing I know is this work. And you have held on to it, it defines you. They're the people who, they say their name and then they say where they work. That is the first thing that comes out of their mouth when you ask for an introduction. Our work does not define us. Our job does not define us at all. And you really need to realize that every time in the workspace, you think those people feel like they are indispensable. And then they realize that actually this organization can do without me. When there are redundancies, when the employer decides they are cutting down on staff, and you're probably the first to go. And that is the one thing that defines you. Without it, you feel helpless. It is really to know that there is a time for work, and after that, there is a time for living the rest of your life. Because there are relationships that are at the workplace, and then there are relationships outside the workplace. And oftentimes, when the relationships outside the workplace, for instance, a family, if you're a family person, when your relationship in the home is not working, many times, even in the workplace, it's not going to work. Because you need to be in, your mind has to be in that space where you walk into the office with a clear mind so that you're productive. But if you walk into the office with chaos, it is highly likely that you will have a chaotic day. Yes. And so you cannot run away from any. You have your life to live outside the office, and you have your work to do so that you're able to live this life. So you cannot run away. It is just a balance. We have to go back that these two things must be balanced. You cannot run away from any of them. There's a time and a season for everything. Yes. There's a time and a season for everything. You cannot run away from any side of what you call your life, what you call your work.
Oh, thank you so very much. I have two more questions that I'm going to ask as we bring this conversation to a close. But before I do that, I will open the floor for questions. If there is any of you listening to this conversation and has a question or a comment about what's going on, what we are discussing today, please feel free to raise your hands, and I will give you an opportunity to ask that. Remember, we are talking about work-life balance, and our guest today is Hellene Otieno. She's an expert in that. She has worked the work, and she knows, she speaks from experience, and she's a consultant, an author, and an authority in this thing. So if you have a question around the topic or anything that has been said, or you have a comment that you wish to contribute or to add on to what has been said, please feel free to raise your hand, and I will give you an opportunity. Meanwhile, I will ask Electin if you have any questions also from your end. If you've received any questions, let me know so that we proceed. If there is no question, then I will ask the last two questions that I have for the guest today. Electin, could you be having any questions on your end?
No, at the moment I don't have any questions, but I hope our guests are going to send them in so that they can be answered by the time the meeting comes to an end.
All right. Thank you so very much. Anybody with a question, feel free to raise your hand. I don't want to lock out anybody. A question or a comment, a contribution, I will quickly give you an opportunity to ask it. All right. I can see some hands being lifted up already. Joan, I will allow you to ask your question. Over to you, Joan.
Thank you very much. Our guest spoke about how the trends are changing at the moment, and that brought us back to my mind. The trends are changing, that people are going into more informal employment than formal employment. And regarding the question I asked of how entrepreneurs can balance work and life. So this is going to be I believe this is going to be a huge topic in the future, because moving into creating our own jobs where no one has created a policy to limit us on our working hours and things in line with that, then it means that there's a big challenge ahead. I've seen people in the current generations, that is the millennials and the younger people. I see that they are in their own jobs, and there's this there's this phrase that they usually say, that I am free to work from anywhere. I can go to a different country and still continue with my work. I can go to a different country and still continue with my work. So for me, my comment is, I guess we need to prioritize, like our guest spoke. We need to prioritize where work ends and where life begins, and what's important and what's not important, and what's of more value to us than the other things. Most of I'm not a very old person, but I've seen people around me create jobs according to their lifestyle. For example, if I find that I can do my own hair, then I can get friends whose hair I can also do, and if they like
Well, I'm not sure if we are able to get Joan. I'm not sure Joan is still on. Can you hear me?
Can't see her. I think our connection went off.
All right. I'm sorry for that. she was beginning to make a comment about something that is closely related to the question I wanted to ask, and I'm just going to ask that question right away. My question is framed this way: different generation experience life differently because of the different factors that come into play, economy, politics, technology, etc. So my question was going to touch on how the different generations have dealt with issues of work-life balance, and I need to hear your thoughts. I'm going to mention the generations here so that at least you get to understand. There was the silent generation that came before the baby boomers, and then there was the baby boomers. Those are the people that actually, it is said that they are the ones who brought in this whole idea of work-life balance between the 70s and the 80s, when they started feeling like we need to balance between work and life. And then we had the generation X, which came in after the baby boomers. Technology was beginning to build up, and then there was the millennials, generation Z, and currently we have generation Alpha. Now the reality is that because of how technology has been permeating our lives, these generations have experienced what we are calling work differently, and they have also experienced what we are calling life differently. I need to hear your thoughts, so that we know how do we help ourselves, because the way things change and the way new generations come, that is how we also keep redefining life and redefining work, and dropping some things that we used to do as traditional practice and adopting some new ways of doing things as contemporary practice. For example, the office these days is becoming virtual. It's becoming an office without walls. It's becoming a 24-hour kind of something. So what is your experience with the different generations, and how things are going, and how they are experiencing work, and what would you advise people of these different generations? Because I think we still have a small number of baby boomers working and a huge number of Gen X. I think most Gen X are either mid-level managers and top-level managers there, and then millennials. They form the biggest group of people who are either in employment or looking for employment. And then Gen Z are the people that are now entrepreneurs. These people that are now crisscrossing the place and doing things on TikTok all over the place. Let me hear your thoughts about this generational influence on work-life balance.
If we take it all the way from the different generations that you have mentioned, from the baby boomers to the millennials to now generation X, the older people, the older generation had the benefit of having very well defined and structured systems, workplaces, and previously people were used to 9 to 5 jobs. And beyond that, people would just go home and then plug into family life or other life, maybe people going to school in the evening and that kind of thing. But the systems were structured, very, very well structured. And so I would imagine it was easier for you to balance the two, because you knew after work, I'm doing life. Over the weekend, I'm doing life. Nowadays, there is no definition. When we come to the current generation, we are working and working and working, whether it's the generation X especially, that are self-employed. So what is happening for them is that they need to build their own systems. They are building their own systems. And how that is happening now that is part of the work that I actually do, is even banks nowadays, when it comes to SMEs, the young people who are now, they have their own jobs, they have their own enterprises, they need mentorship. They seriously need mentorship. And it is the millennials and the people who are in these structured systems that are now mentoring Generation X. So, as the young people who are doing their own work, you need to realize that one of the things that you really need is someone to mentor you, someone who will teach you about systems. Because as long as you do not have systems in your enterprise, then you become a slave to that enterprise. And that is why they are unable to, like Joanne was saying, that is why they are unable to move away. They are unable to define when I should stop working. Because you don't have a system. If the system is running, then you can leave it and even go for a holiday for 30 days. But if you don't have a system, then you are unable to leave that business. So you're feeling like you're an entrepreneur, but that is, you are now even more employed than the person who is employed by an organization, because you're stuck to that business.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, when you go into entrepreneurship, you're looking for freedom. You're looking for freedom from being, many people say, managed too closely. But you realize when you're the person in that system, there is no, you cannot even define the business and the person, the business and the owner. They are merged into one thing. So for the millennials, they just need to recognize that they need mentorship seriously, and they need to build systems. And once they build systems, then they will have life. They will have the opportunity to now know that this is work, and beyond work, there is a life, and I can balance the two. So mentorship is very key for this generation, for them to achieve this balance. Very, very key. Yeah. Very key. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I hear you say people must learn how to build systems so that they can have life.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. Especially entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's so deep. My last question. Okay, I have. I don't know whether this is a question somebody's asking here. All right. My last question is going to be, what is the future of work-life balance? And as you answer that question, we are thinking about the days when Generation Alpha will be the policy makers, they will be the workers and the managers, because that's the latest generation, a generation that is purely raised on social media. I mean, they are raised on gadgets, and I mean, that's all they eat, gadgets from morning to evening. So what is the future of work-life balance?
Fortunately, gadgets, for the most part, make your work easier. So even if you are going to spend probably maybe a whole day in the office, you're actually able to spend half a day in the office and achieve the same amount of work and be able to have time to do other things. For me, I think that is where Generation Alpha are going to take us. I didn't even know they are called Alpha. I think that is where they are going to take us. And because Generation Alpha is going to come from, is what follows Generation X.
Mm.
In my opinion, Generation X will mentor these people to become, even if they are very tech-oriented,
Mm.
it will be easier for this generation to incorporate systems in whatever work that they do.
Mm.
Remember, these are not people who like routine,
Mm.
and they are not people who can be held down for too long, the way we were used to the 9-to-5 job.
Mm.
They are people who want to work for a short time and earn more money.
Mm.
And for them, I honestly think this thing is going to go full circle, and they'll be better at balancing their lives than we are.
Mm.
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow. That is quite deep, quite insightful. Before I bring the curtains down, I want to see if there is anybody else who has a question or a comment. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question or a comment. I can see new people joining the conversation right now, a few minutes before we close it. So if you have any question today, we've been discussing work-life balance, engaging Hellene Otieno, who is an expert in issues of work-life balance. She's a consultant in that. She does her work through her company that is called Helle Enterprises, and we have had a rich conversation indeed. Lots of insights coming, and lots of new things to learn from the conversation. So if you have a question, please feel free. Or if you have a comment, you want to contribute to what has been said, I would want to give you an opportunity to say that. Meanwhile, I want to see if we have some questions from Electin. Electin, do you have any questions from your end?
Not really.
All right. I don't see anybody else lifting up their hand, so I think I do not have any other question. Before we close it completely, I will allow Hellene to make her final remarks or her final comments, after which I will call on Electin to give us some 2 or 3 announcements before we bring this whole conversation to a close. Hellene, over to you. Let us hear your final remarks.
Okay. Thank you for all of our guests who have been on this call, listening keenly.
Mm.
And one of the things I want to leave you with is I draw a lot of inspiration from the Bible. And when I look at the way God, those many, many years ago, when he was building the earth, it took a long time to build. It took 6 days, but on the 7th day, he rested. So if God rested, who are we not to rest?
Mm.
It is important for us to really focus on self-care, because if we do not, then everything else crumbles around us. We all know when people become sick or suffer from mental health because of stress that is work-related, it becomes very daunting for the family that has to take care of them.
Mm.
I'd like to leave you with a quote from a journalist and an author called Paul Kastner.
Mm.
Paul Kastner said, one of the aspects of happiness is when you can make as little distinction as possible between your work and your play.
Mm.
That is where balance is achieved.
Mm.
Meaning, you need, even as you work, you need to enjoy so much that when you go into play, there is no distinction.
Mm.
I think we struggle when you're going into a job where we are also struggling to do that job. But when there is no clear distinction, you will achieve happiness and you will achieve a balance. And you will be doing both as you're meant to be doing. You will be working and you will be doing life. Thank you very much. I would like to end it there.
Wow, that is Hellene Otieno, the CEO of Helle Enterprises, has been our guest today, helping us to build an understanding on the whole subject of work-life balance. And indeed, she has done a very good job, very insightful, very, very much on point, sharing very, very practical lessons from her experience. As I said earlier, she's the CEO of Helle Enterprises. If you have any consultancy work related to what she does, please reach out to her. You can see her profile on LinkedIn and you can actually get in touch with her directly and you will be assisted accordingly. So as we bring this to a close, I will call on Electin to make a few announcements and then we can call this a good day of learning. Over to you, Electin.
So much, Dawson. What I've learned from this conversation is that beyond work, there is a life, yeah? So this conversation was sponsored, or rather was powered by Zonta Publishers and the SheLeads project. And the SheLeads project is a project where Doso was explaining earlier when the conversation was beginning, is where we have different women come up and write about a topic that will gear, or rather will be able to help in the representation of women in the spaces of leadership. So this book can be purchased from Nuria Bookstore or Amazon or Somanami along Gong Road. And also we have a volume 2 coming up in September 29th. We are all invited to the launch, which will happen at Village Market on the 29th of September of this month, sorry. So you are all invited to that event. And in case of any questions, or in case you feel like you want to take part in this project as a leader or as a woman thought leader, feel free to engage with us so that you can be able to take you through the process, so that you can be able also to take part in the project. Besides that, you can also join us in more of these conversations from what has been written from the book in volume 1 and also volume 2. Thank you so much for your questions and being part of this conversation. I'll hand it back to Dawson.
Thank you so very much, Electin. Just to add on to what she has said, these conversations will be coming to us every Monday and every Thursday. So next week on Monday, we have another conversation coming up, and then on Thursday, we'll also have another. Volume 2 launch will be happening on the 29th, as has been said, at the Trademark Hotel in Village Market. If you want to attend that launch, please visit the website www.sheleads.co.ke. That is www.sheleads.co.ke. SheLeads is one word. You will find a page there under events. You'll see book launch. You can register there and then you'll be part of the conversation. And would like you to come so that you can meet these women and interact with them, network with them, and get to learn from them. And of course, we'll be happy to see you there so that we can be able to learn and grow together. Well, I think that would be it for today. I've been your host, Doso Radido, assisted by Electin Kunyu, and our guest has been Hellene Otieno, the CEO of Helle Enterprises. Thank you so very much for sparing your time. I really appreciate you. I wish you a very good night and a blessed weekend. Until we meet again next week on Monday, God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.